The massive space station rotated slowly against the backdrop of distant stars, its crystalline walls catching and reflecting light from a dozen different suns. Inside the Grand Council chamber, Ambassador Kim Hyun-woo sat in his assigned seat and watched the daily theater of galactic politics play out before him. The Vorthok Empire dominated the center of the chamber. These beings looked like walking mountains of living crystal, their bodies sparkling with internal light as they spoke. Their voices sounded like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass. They had ruled parts of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. "The mining proposal for Kepler 44b requires immediate attention," announced Chancellor Vorthok, his crystalline form towering above the other representatives. "This system contains enough rare metals to power our fleets for the next century." The opposite side of the chamber, the Zephyrian Collective's representatives, sat in perfect silence. These gray-skinned beings shared a hive mind that connected their thoughts across the galaxy. They moved in perfect synchronization, their large black eyes blinking at exactly the same moment. When they spoke as one voice. "The Collective calculates a 73.6% probability that the Vorthok proposal will damage the local ecosystem," they said in unison. "We propose alternative extraction methods." Kim Hyun-woo adjusted his translation earpiece and sighed. He had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years now, and every day felt exactly the same. The big powers argued about who would control what, while the smaller civilizations sat quietly and hoped not to be noticed. Trade Liaison Park Min-ho slipped into the seat next to him, carrying a datapad full of rejected proposals. "Well, that's 3 more of our ideas voted down without discussion," he whispered. "The disaster relief protocol, the food sharing program, and the medical aid initiative. They didn't even let us speak." Hyun-woo nodded but wasn't surprised. Earth had been part of the galactic community for 57 years. Ever since humans had figured out faster-than-light travel, but compared to civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, humans were still considered babies. The Vorthok and Zephyrians had been playing their political games since before humans had invented writing. They traded favors, made secret deals, and fought over resources while the rest of the galaxy watched. The smaller civilizations had learned to pick sides and hope for protection. All in favor of the Vorthok mining proposal. Chancellor Vorthok asked. Hyun-woo watched the vote counter climb on the big screen above the chamber. Green lights appeared next to each civilization that voted yes. The Vorthok had 247 votes, mostly from worlds that depended on their protection. The Zephyrians managed 43 votes from their allied systems. 23 civilizations abstained, too scared to pick a side. Earth's single vote wasn't even counted in the official tally. "They don't even see us," Park Min-ho muttered, watching as the older species celebrated their victory or planned their next move. Hyun-woo smiled quietly. Sometimes being invisible is an advantage, while the council argued about mining rights. In trade routes, Earth had been busy with different work. Human diplomats, scientists, and engineers had spread across the galaxy, not to make political deals, but to help solve problems. Dr. Lee So-young worked on a small agricultural world called Demeter 3, where the soil was getting too salty to grow food. Instead of offering to sell them expensive fertilizers like the big corporations did, she taught the local farmers how to clean their soil using techniques that humans had developed on Earth. She had been there for 2 years, living in a small house and eating the same simple food as the farmers. Engineer Choi Dong-han spent his time on the frontier stations, the rough mining outposts and trading posts on the edge of civilized space. These places were too poor and dangerous for the big powers to care about. But Choi Dong-han helped them build water purification systems and repair their old equipment. He asked for nothing in return, except a place to sleep and some food, Captain. Oh Tae-young commanded a small fleet of ships that patrolled the Outer Rim, protecting trade convoys from pirates. The big powers were too busy fighting each other to worry about pirates attacking small merchant ships. But humans remembered what it was like to be weak and need protection. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin ran. And Zephyrian space. She treated patients from both sides, as well as refugees from the constant small wars that broke out between the two empires. She had trained local doctors and nurses, sharing human medical knowledge freely. None of these humans were trying to gain political power or win votes in the council. They were just helping people who needed help. But slowly, quietly, they were building something the galaxy had never seen before, back on Earth. Director Nam Ji-hoon received daily reports from humans scattered across the galaxy. In his office deep underground, he looked at a map showing all the places where humans were working. Green dots marked successful projects, blue dots showed ongoing work, and red dots indicated places that still needed help. "How many worlds are in our network now?" he asked his assistant. 127 confirmed partnerships, came the reply, all based on mutual aid, not political agreements. Nam Ji-hoon nodded, while the galactic powers played their ancient games of dominance and control. Humanity was building something entirely different. They were creating a network based on friendship, trust, helping each other. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most powerful force wasn't the biggest army or the most votes in a council. Sometimes it was simply caring about other people. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, cutting through solid rock deep beneath the Korean mountains. Director Nam Ji-hoon checked his watch as the doors finally opened into a vast underground chamber filled with the soft glow of holographic displays and the quiet hum of advanced computers. The Global Defense Initiative's command center was humanity's best-kept secret, while the rest of the galaxy saw humans as newcomers barely worth noticing. This hidden facility coordinated a network that spanned thousands of star systems. The room was filled with analysts, translators, coordinators working at their stations, each one managing relationships with different alien civilizations. Nam Ji-hoon walked across the polished floor to the center of the room, where a massive, three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly in the air. Each star system glowed with a different color. Green meant strong partnerships. Blue indicated ongoing projects. Yellow showed potential allies, and red marked systems that still needed help. "Status report," he said, his voice carrying easily across the quiet room despite the importance of what they were discussing. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin approached with a datapad in her hands. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she was also one of the galaxy's leading experts on alien cultures. She had spent 20 years studying how different species thought, what they valued, and how they made decisions. "We now have mutual aid agreements with 127 minor civilizations," she reported. "The Altarians just signed a new deal yesterday. They'll provide us with rare minerals that we need for our ship engines. In exchange, we're giving them our water purification technology to help clean up their polluted oceans." She touched her datapad and several star systems on the map glowed brighter. "The Centauri colonies are asking for more medical help. They're having a population crisis because their birth rates are too low. Our doctors have been working with them to figure out why." Nam Ji-hoon nodded and turned to Intelligence Chief Bae Soo-jin. She was younger than Dr. Yoon, but her job was just as important. She kept track of what the major galactic powers were doing, looking for opportunities and watching for threats. "And the major powers?" Nam Ji-hoon asked. Bae Soo-jin shook her head. With a slight smile, still fighting over scraps while ignoring the real resources, "The Vorthok Empire is so busy trying to control mining rights that they haven't noticed something important. About 30% of the galaxy's food production now depends on agricultural techniques that humans developed." She pointed to a cluster of agricultural worlds on the map. These farming planets were struggling to feed their populations. The Vorthok and Zephyrians were too busy with their political games to help, but our agricultural specialists went there and taught them new farming methods. Now these worlds produce more food than they need, and they're grateful to us. "What about the frontier regions?" Nam Ji-hoon asked. Captain Oh Tae-young stepped forward. He was a tall man with graying hair and the weathered look of someone who had spent years in space. He commanded a small fleet of ships that operated on the outer edges of civilized space, far from the attention of the major powers. "The Outer Rim colonies are desperate for protection from pirate raids," he reported. "The big powers don't care about those regions because they're too poor to be worth their attention. We've been quietly providing security. escorts for their trade ships. He touched the map, and red dots appeared along the galaxy's edge. These are the pirate bases we've shut down in the last year. We don't make a big deal about it. The local colonies just see it as neighbors helping neighbors, but word is spreading that humans can be trusted to keep their promises. Nam Ji-hoon studied the map for a long moment. The green and blue dots far outnumbered the red ones now. While the Vorthok and Zephyrians fought their ancient battles for control, humanity had been building something completely different. How did we learn to do this? Asked a young analyst who was new to the command center. Dr. Yoon Hajin smiled. We studied Earth's own history. We looked at how small communities survived when great empires fell apart. We learned that cooperation often proves stronger than conquest. She gestured to a wall display showing historical data from Earth. Throughout human history, the biggest armies and the richest kingdoms eventually fell. But the communities that helped each other, that shared resources and knowledge, those were the ones that survived and thrived. Nam Ji-hoon walked around the galaxy map, watching the colored lights pulse with activity. Ships were delivering medical supplies to plague-stricken worlds. Engineers were helping struggling colonies build better infrastructure. Teachers were sharing knowledge with civilizations that had been ignored by the major powers. The Vorthok and Zephyrians think, power comes from controlling others, he said quietly. They believe that to be strong, you have to make others weak. But humans learned something different. He turned to face his team. We learned that real strength comes from making others stronger. When we help a farming world produce more food, we create a friend. When we protect a trade convoy from pirates, we build trust. When we share our medical knowledge, we save lives and make allies. Bae Su-jin nodded. The major powers are so focused on their political games that they can't see what we're really doing. They think we're just providing charity to worthless worlds. They don't realize we're building the foundation for a new kind of civilization. Nam Ji-hoon looked at the map one more time, then made his announcement. Phase 1 of Final Moves Protocol is complete. We're not trying to rule the galaxy. We're trying to save it. The room fell silent as everyone understood the significance of his words. Humanity's real plan was finally ready to begin. The emergency alarm echoed through the Galactic Council station for the first time in over 200 years. Ambassador Kim Hyun-woo rushed through the corridors alongside hundreds of other representatives, all heading toward the main assembly hall. The crystal walls flickered with urgent messages in dozens of languages, but the meaning was clear in every one. Catastrophic plague outbreak. Inside the great chamber, chaos reigned. Shouted over each other in panic while translation systems struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. The massive display screen at the front showed a map of the galaxy with red warning symbols spreading like fire across the core worlds. Chancellor Vorthak stood at the center podium, his crystalline form flickering with distress patterns that Kim Hyun-woo had never seen before. The Andorian plague has reached 17 core systems, the crystal being announced, his voice cracking like breaking glass. All silicon-based life forms are at risk. We need immediate quarantine protocols. Hyun-woo felt his heart sink. Silicon-based life forms included most of the galaxy's major civilizations. The Vorthok Empire, the Zephyrian Collective, and dozens of other species all shared this basic biology. Only carbon-based species like humans and a few others were naturally immune. Dr. Yoon Hejin, who had flown in from Earth as soon as the crisis began, leaned over to whisper in Kim Hyun-woo's ear. Our medical teams have been studying the plague data. It's worse than they're admitting. This disease doesn't just kill silicon-based life forms, it corrupts their entire biological structure. On the display screen, the red warning zones continued to spread. The plague had started on a remote mining world called Andor Prime, but it traveled faster than anyone had expected. Trade ships, diplomatic vessels, and even military fleets were carrying the disease from system to system. The Zephyrian collectives. Representatives stood up, but instead of speaking in their usual perfect unison, different voices came from different parts of their delegation. We are experiencing ... difficulty. Maintaining connection, they said, their words stuttering and overlapping. Infected nodes are ... corrupting ... the network. Kim Hyun-woo realized what was happening. The Zephyrian hive mind that had made them so powerful was now their greatest weakness. As the plague infected individual Zephyrians, it was spreading through their mental network, threatening to destroy their entire civilization from within. "We need to cut off all trade routes," shouted a representative from the Altarian Republic. "Close the hyperspace lanes, quarantine every affected system that will destroy our economy," protested a delegate from the Centauri colonies. "Half the galaxy depends on trade with the core worlds." Chancellor Vorthak raised his arms for silence, but his usual commanding presence was gone. "The Vorthak Empire is implementing immediate quarantine measures. All member worlds are ordered to cease contact with infected systems." But even as he spoke, Kim Hu-Yanwu could see the cracks forming in the Great Alliance. On the display screen, several Vorthok member worlds were already cutting themselves off from the Empire's communication network. They were choosing their own survival over Imperial unity. Dr. Yoon. Hajin tapped her datapad and showed Kim Hyanwu the latest reports. "It's getting worse by the hour. The plague is spreading through the Vorthok's crystal-based biology faster than their medical technology can track it. Their quarantine efforts are actually making things worse because they're creating panic." Around the chamber, Kim Hyanwu watched as the galaxy's carefully constructed political order began to fall apart. Representatives were receiving urgent messages from their homeworlds, many of them orders to return immediately. The Vorthok Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years, was fracturing as member worlds prioritized their own survival. "We need to evacuate the station," announced the Zephyrian representative. But now only half of their delegation was speaking. "The collective is ... fragmenting. We cannot maintain." Coherent thought, Kim Hyanwu stood up slowly. 457. Years Earth's representatives had been ignored, dismissed, and treated like children. But now, as the great powers of the galaxy crumbled before a crisis they couldn't solve, it was time for humanity to step forward. "I request permission to address the council," he announced. The chamber fell silent. In all the years of galactic politics, Earth had never requested emergency speaking time during a crisis. Chancellor Vorthak, desperate for any solution, granted the request. The floor recognizes the representative from Earth. Kim Hyanwu walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. Behind him, the display screen showed the plague spreading across more systems. Around him, the representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations waited to hear what the humans could possibly offer. "Earth is prepared to provide immediate medical aid and plague-resistant food supplies to any world that needs them," he announced. "We ask for nothing in return except safe passage for our aid ships." The silence stretched for long moments. Then, from the back of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. It was Representative Claren from Demeter 3, one of the agricultural worlds that humans had helped years earlier. "Demeter 3 accepts Earth's offer," she said. Within minutes, 17 more worlds had requested human assistance. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity had been building in the shadows. While the great powers played their political games, the age of the great empires was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin. Captain Ote Zhang stood on the bridge of his medical ship, watching the blue and green world of Zarian Prime grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, a fleet of 30 vessels moved in perfect formation. Through space, the ships looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before, not because they were advanced, but because they came from so many different worlds working together. "Captain, we're getting signals from the escort ships," reported Communications Officer Jiang Minzu from his station. "The Altarian vessels are requesting permission to take point position." Oh, Tae-young smiled. The Altarians had insisted on providing the heaviest escort ships for the convoy. 3 years ago, their homeworld had been dying from poisoned water supplies. Human engineers had taught them how to build purification systems that cleaned their oceans. They were repaying that kindness by protecting human medical ships. "Grant their request," Otang said, "and thank them for their service." The convoy was unlike anything in galactic history. The core ships were human medical vessels, loaded with doctors, nurses, and supplies. But the escort came from dozens of different species. Centauri patrol boats flew alongside Altarian destroyers. Frontier mining ships had been converted to carry extra medical equipment. Even the peaceful agricultural worlds had sent what ships they could spare. Incoming transmission from Zarian's surface, Zhang Minsu announced, requesting permission to land directly in the capital. No quarantine protocols? This was another sign of how desperate things had become. Normally, alien ships had to wait in orbit for days while planetary authorities checked their papers and inspected their cargo. But Zarian Prime was dying, and they were willing to trust anyone who offered help. "Tell them we'll begin landing operations immediately," Oh Tae-young ordered. "And remind them that our medical teams are immune to the plague." Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Lee So-young was already working in a makeshift hospital set up in Zarian's largest sports stadium. The building had been converted into a treatment center, with rows of beds filled with silicon-based patients whose crystalline bodies were slowly turning gray and cracking. She moved between the patients with a team of medics she had trained. Years earlier, most of them weren't even human. There was Kexti, a reptilian doctor from the frontier worlds who had learned surgery techniques at a human medical station. Velmora, an insectoid nurse from the outer colonies who had studied human anatomy to better understand carbon-based biology. "Dr. Lee, the treatment is working better than we hoped," reported medical coordinator Park Yoon-ji, checking her data. "Pad, infection rate is dropping by 12% per day. The patients are responding to the medication." Lee So-young nodded but wasn't surprised. Human medical teams had developed the plague countermeasures, not through superior technology, but through careful study of Earth's own pandemic history. While other species had grown comfortable with their advanced civilizations, humanity had never forgotten the lessons of survival. "We've seen diseases like this before," she explained to a group of local doctors who were watching her work. "Earth, we learned that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. We don't need advanced technology to stop a plague. We just need to understand how diseases spread and how bodies fight them." The treatment protocol was surprisingly basic. It combined traditional quarantine methods with simple medications that boosted the immune systems of silicon-based life forms. The key was acting quickly and treating the disease before it could spread through an entire population. Across the city, engineer Choi Dong-hin worked with local technicians to restore food production systems that had broken down during the panic. The techniques he shared weren't advanced by galactic standards, but they were proven through centuries of disaster and renewal on Earth. "The automated farms are back online," he reported to Dr. Lee. "We're using manual backup systems until the main computers can be repaired. It's old-fashioned, but it works." Back at the Galactic Council Station, the political landscape was changing by the hour. Ambassador Kim Hyun-woo received constant updates from Earth's command center about the relief operations. The news was better than anyone had dared hope. 17. Systems have requested immediate assistance, reported Dr. Yoon Hye-jin. But more importantly, 43 other worlds have offered to help with the relief effort. They're sending ships, supplies, and medical personnel. The Vorthok Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years, found itself unable to help even its own colonies. Their advanced technology meant nothing against a disease they had never seen before. They could only watch as human relief convoys brought hope to worlds they had written off as lost. The Zephyrian Collective was in even worse shape. Their rigid hierarchy had completely collapsed as member worlds cut themselves off from the hive mind to prevent the plague from spreading through their mental network. Individual Zephyrian colonies were now making their own decisions for the first time in centuries. And many of them were choosing to work with humans in the underground command center beneath Korea. Intelligence Chief Bae Soo-jin brought the latest reports to Director Nam Ji-hoon. "Sir, we're receiving cooperation requests from 89 different star systems. The network is expanding faster than our projections." Nam Ji-hoon stood before the galaxy map, watching as green dots appeared across the star field. Each light represented a world that had chosen cooperation over domination, mutual aid over political manipulation. "The great powers spent centuries building empires based on fear and control," he said quietly. "But empires fall when they face something they can't dominate. We built something different. We built a community." He turned to face his team, Then it's time for the final moves. The Galactic Council chamber looked completely different from the place where Earth's proposals had been ignored for decades. Ambassador Kim Hyun-woo walked to his seat and marveled. At the changes around him, it's a great hall that had once been dominated by the towering crystal forms of the Vorthok Empire and the synchronized movements of the Zephyrian Collective, now buzzed with voices from hundreds of smaller worlds. Representatives from agricultural planets sat next to delegates from mining colonies. Frontier worlds that had never been allowed to speak before now had prominent seats near the center of the chamber. The old hierarchy based on military power and ancient prestige had crumbled during the Plague Crisis, replaced by something entirely new. The emergency session of the Galactic Council will now come to order, announced the new council president, an elderly representative from one of the agricultural worlds that humans had helped years earlier. The council was not being led by either the Vorthok Empire or the Zephyrian Collective. Kim Hyun-woo stood up when his turn came to speak. The chamber fell silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before, instead of the dismissive quiet that had greeted human proposals in the past. This was the respectful attention given to someone who had proven their worth. The crisis has passed, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The plague has been contained and the affected worlds are recovering, but the lessons of this crisis must not be forgotten. He paused and looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from hundreds of different worlds. We propose a new framework for galactic cooperation, one based not on dominance but on mutual aid, not on who can control others, but on who can best help others. Representative Claren from Demeter 3 stood up immediately. She was a small, green-skinned being whose agricultural world had been one of the first to work with humans. Demeter 3 seconds Earth's proposal, she said firmly. We have seen what cooperation can achieve. When our crops were failing, the great powers offered to sell us expensive solutions. But humans came to our world and taught us how to fix our soil ourselves. They asked for nothing in return except friendship. One by one, other representatives began to stand. The Altarians spoke about how human water purification technology had saved their poisoned oceans. The Centauri colonies described how human medical knowledge had solved their population crisis. Frontier worlds told stories of human ships protecting their trade convoys from pirates when no one else would help. The old way of doing things is broken, declared Captain Zexter from the Outer Rim territories. For centuries, we small worlds have been forced to choose sides between the great powers, traded our independence for protection that never came when we really needed it. But humans showed us a different way. In the section where the Vorthok Empire's representatives sat, Chancellor Vorthak slowly rose to his feet. His crystalline form was still dimmed from the plague crisis, and his voice had lost much of its commanding tone. The Vorthok Empire has ruled through strength for 3,000 years, he said quietly. But strength without wisdom is useless. We could not save our own colonies from the plague. He looked directly at Kim Hyun-woo. We wish to learn from Earth's methods. We offer our technological resources in exchange for training in disaster response and mutual aid. We want to be part of this new network, not as rulers, but as partners. The transformation was even more dramatic among the Zephyrian Collective. Their new representative, an individual Zephyrian named Cathara, stood up and spoke with her own voice for the first time in centuries. The collective hive mind that made us powerful also made us vulnerable, she admitted. When the plague threatened to corrupt our network, we had to break apart to survive. Now we've learned that individual thinking can be just as valuable as collective thought. She gestured to the other Zephyrian representatives scattered throughout the chamber. We request inclusion in Earth's Relief Coordination Network. Computational abilities could serve the common good, not just our own interests. Dr. Yoon Hejin, who had been promoted to Galactic Affairs Coordinator, watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. She had spent decades studying alien cultures, but she had never seen anything like this transformation. The galaxy's future would not be determined by who could dominate others, but by who could best serve the common welfare. Back on Earth, in the Underground Command Center, Director Nam Ji-hoon observed the council session through live video feeds. His team of analysts and coordinators watched as their years of careful work finally bore fruit. The galaxy map on the wall showed green lights spreading across the star field, each one representing a world that had chosen cooperation over competition. "We didn't conquer the galaxy through force or political manipulation," he said to his assembled team. "We won by proving that genuine care for others' welfare is the most powerful force in the universe." The voting began, and the results were overwhelming. The new Galactic Cooperation Framework passed by a margin of 312 votes to 23. With only a few isolated worlds abstaining, the Age of Empire was over. The Age of Community had begun. As the session ended, Kim Hyun-woo reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The galaxy had learned a lesson that Earth had known for millennia: communities built on cooperation and mutual aid were stronger than empires built on dominance. While the traditional powers had been playing chess, humanity had been building a family. In the end, Earth's final moves weren't about winning the game. They were about changing the rules entirely.